Thai. Thai. I meant hi. So I could. Oh, never mind. So I could make a bunch of videos about India, or I could just do one stream where I just talk about all the things in India. So I opted to do one stream where I talk about all the things in India, and then if there are questions, then we can kind of talk about that as well. So that is it. Okay. Just setting up some maps. Okay. This is India. And okay, so I've been to India over the past few weeks. I left the United States in January 7th, and then arrived in Delhi. So it was I always thought that there was no direct flight to India from California. I thought that you always needed to stop somewhere, whether it be Singapore or Korea or London. But apparently, you can absolutely go directly from California to India, and my flight was from San Francisco to India, which was kind of like mind blowing. I didn't even know that was possible, but apparently it was. And I didn't. I wanted to know whether the flight went transatlantic or trans-Pacific, but my flight did not have the in-flight flight tracker where you can see the map. So I couldn't get a chance to know during the flight where we were, but after the flight, I checked online, and apparently there's a website where you can check, hey, here is where this specific flight went for that day, and I looked, and it was trans Pacific. So our flight went from California to Delhi, like across the Pacific Ocean, which is still kind of like unbelievable to me. But anyway, the crazy thing is, it's like the flight is like 17 hours, but ours was like 16 hours and 15 minutes or so. I thought it was going to be very grueling and very energy intensive, but surprisingly, I just slept throughout the flight, and I went and I immediately fell asleep, and then a few moments later they gave the first meal, and then I ate the first meal, and then I went dozed off again, and then I woke up, and then there was a second meal, and I was like, wow, has it been even that long? And then after the second meal I just slept again, and then I woke up in India, which is kind of crazy. The I'm personally a very big fan of Indian food, so the flight meal for Indian Airlines was really really good. Uh, I had all vegetarian options, and it was just so good. And I really liked the fact that Indian Airlines give you the vegetarian option because yeah, Korean Airlines don't really give you a full vegetarian option, but that was a nice thing that I appreciated. And then our flight landed in Delhi, and from Delhi we went to Varanasi. And so this is Indira Gandhi International Airport. So I'm gonna really show my ignorance here, but I thought Indira Gandhi was related to the Gandhi, but apparently it's not. Indira Gandhi is a politician from India who is not related to the Gandhi. But anyway, going from Gandhi Airport to the Varanasi, which is here. There's an airport here as well. So the thing that really surprised me at first about India is the fact that airport security is so strict. When I take domestic flights are usually a lot easier on most countries because you already did most of the security work as you were entering the country. And international flights, but my experience in India was a little bit different, and I think a lot of travelers who went to visit India would agree, because yeah, international is kind of like okay because you're kind of used to the scrutiny of international air flights, but for in India, domestic flights have a really tight security, and you know how when you're laying over in another city, you can exit the airport, explore, and then come back to the airport? Well, the thing is, in India, you can't really exit and enter the airport freely. You need to have a boarding pass that's about to depart in a few hours, because if not, you just can't enter the airport. And so there's a lot of security measures around airports in India, and I was wondering why this was, and then I kind of forgot about it because other things happened. But on my way from India to Korea, because I was flying to visit my parents, I learned that that's because India has a very long history of civil unrest when it comes to domestic terrorism, and that is mostly because, well, India is a. We're gonna talk about this a lot, but India is a really, 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 really big country, and India has a lot of different ethnicities. India has a lot of different kind of people. India has a lot of different religions. India has a lot of different languages. So because of this, there's a lot of variety within India. But guess what happened after around World War II? They merged this in big almost kind of a continent into one country, and then kind of forced the unified government upon this really kind of like multifaceted country. And so of course there's a lot of unrest about who gets to be on top, who gets to be in control of this like big government. And because of that, there's been a lot of civil unrest in India, and that is mostly why the airports have a very, very, very heightened security. And well, we got to know that by experience. So if you're planning on visiting India, that is, I think, something that you want to keep in mind for as you try to go to domestic flights. You really want to make sure that you're taking the time to pass security. If your layover has to be have a padding time just so you can get through security. And then What's another neat thing about the Indira Gandhi Airport is this is the first time I actually used the airport's prayer room. I went there to do my 108 bows and then do a little bit of meditation. The facility was really great. Again, I think it's because India already has a lot of religions. So yeah, the facilities are really great. Yes, I remember this, but then and this too. This is in the international terminal. So this is, I think, the most don't get me wrong, but this is the most unrealistic photo of the airport. Why unrealistic? Because when you go to India, it's very, very, very rare that you are going to see uh, the sky and the atmosphere that clear. Why? Because number one, maybe in the summertime it's a little bit different, but I went in January, so it's a little bit, like maybe the situation is different. But India is very humid, especially in northern India. So number one, there's a lot of mist, and number two, culturally, India burns a lot of things, right? Whether it be incense or whether it be ceremonial fires or whether it be like just burning some lumber for you to be warm. There's a lot of things that are burning, and therefore, the air quality in India is really not that great. But this isn't to say like you can't breathe. It's just the air can be really dusty and ashy and humid, so the visibility is very, very poor. So that's why I'm saying it's a little bit like that photo of a really clear sky is kind of I've only seen it. I stayed in India for like 2.5 weeks, but I've only seen a clear sky like once. But anyway, my journey started in Varanasi, and Varanasi is one of the, I think, oldest cities in India. And the important thing about Varanasi is that there's India has like this spiritual home of a river, like America has the Great Five Lakes and things like that, but and I think Korea has the Han River, which is the most important river in Korea. But the thing with India is that the most important river in India is called the Ganges River, and people may know about this river, but because this river is so important, it goes from straight from the Himalayas and it goes all the way to the touches various parts of India, but the most important thing, the most important kind of city when it comes to this river is Varanasi. So, just reloaded my map. Hi Denise, good morning. So this river is the Ganges River, as you can see, if you can read it. But you can see that this river is very forked. It goes like it's in various shapes, but then you see the stream, how it goes all the way up to Nepal, and then yeah, it goes basically the mountain snow, up high up in the Everest mountains and all the Himalayas. That is what melts and then is becomes the rivers, and it goes all the way from here. So as you can see, there's a lot of cities that are adjacent to the river, but the Ganges River is practically the most celebrated in Varanasi. I'm not really finding the city anymore. And the reason for that is because it's a very there's a lot of Hindu influence in Varanasi, right? And there we go. So if you look here, there's a lot of things that we call ghats, and these are basically stairs, right? And wow, my internet is like really slow today. But there's a lot of stairs like this that are directly looking at the river. And this river, because it is holy, many people are bathing in the water, and because it is again holy, there's a lot of spiritual notions within the river as well. So I'm just gonna show you some pictures. So this is on the way to Varanasi, but yeah, as soon as you enter kind of the area where you can see the water, it looks like just like this, where there's a lot of boats, and the how much water is in the river is kind of dependent on what season you go to. You can go to Varanasi in the season where it's relatively less humid, where there's not a lot of rain, or you can go where there's a lot of rain. Hey Rio. Oh yeah, 12 a.m. is pretty late. Get some sleep. And as you can see, a lot of boats here, and needless to say, a lot of people. Why? Because this is a holy site. A lot of people come to, a lot of Hindu people, they come to this site for a pilgrimage. They want to be blessed by the river. And every Indian's wish, lifelong wish, is to visit this river at least once in their lifetime. And the best way to kind of die in the Hindu tradition is to be cremated here. And why cremated? Because burning, again, is a sacred act in India. So if you can get burned here, and if your ashes can wash over this river, then it's the best. You wash away you purge all the sins and the impurities of your soul, and then you end up in the next realm, where you advanced you're one step above wherever you were in this lifetime. So a lot of funeral proceedings happen in this area as well. And I don't know if you're gonna see the people. Oh yeah, a lot of street dogs. And but the thing is, burning is for the people who are kind of higher up in the ranking of the caste. So if you're not the up in the social ladder, then burning, you can't really afford to be cremated. And in that sense, in that situation, because you still want to be close to the river, because you want to still be purged by the river, your body will just kind of go. And the water, therefore the river, will contain sometimes partially decomposed or partially burned body parts. And it's not just humans, there's other animals as well. And because it's considered a sacred river, a lot of people bathe in it, therefore a lot of shampoo and soap as well, and a lot of ash water, and then a lot of industrial waste and things like that. And another thing with India is that you can kind of go to the restroom anywhere out in the open. So yeah, the water quality is not that great, is an understatement, but still it is considered culturally holy. Therefore a lot of people, regardless of the quality of the water, measured by science and things like that, it's still good water, holy water. A lot of animals in general in India. So you can see monkeys here, and they're just kind of hanging out in the ghats like this. Videos are too slow. Hey, dog. Yep. So this is again people who are bathing here, and you're gonna see a lot of people bathing, and so this is the site. So behind this kind of fence is where the cremation is happening, and the water you see here is ash water. And as this water washes down, there's people at the bottom who go through this ash water to look for gold parts. So if they had gold teeth, or the body had some gold rings and things, trinkets that the body had, if they want to kind of recover those for many reasons. So that's why after the cremation, when they wash over the body, the water drains down here once again. Yep, and this is where it's happening. And this kind of a site can be very shocking for people, but I kind of knew what to expect, so I was kind of okay with dealing with this. And as you can probably imagine, uh, smell is one thing, but yeah, it's usually and when you're in India, you're usually smelling like 10 things at once, so it becomes less pronounced. And yeah, pretty great architecture styles, and also not just monkeys and dogs, also goats, and again because it's India, a lot of cows as well. um, I took a picture of the sand of the Ganges. Why? Because in the Buddhist sutras, many people say, well, in the sutras, there's a lot of mention of as many as the sands of the Ganges River, right? So we figuratively say, oh, there's a million things, right? And when we say that, we're not literally saying there's a million things. We just mean million is a lot of things. So in the Buddhist sutras, and I'm assuming Indians like colloquially said this, oh, there's as many as the sands of the Ganges River. So this is kind of an important thing. So I took a picture of it, and this is the sand of the Ganges River, and some other photos here. Yep, I already looked very jet lagged, but uh, again, after the streets of Varanasi, come back to the temple, and this is a Buddhist pilgrimage, so we got our I don't know the robe. I don't know what the proper term of it is in English, but in Korean it's called kasa, and it's a traditional kind of like a way Indian dressing. You uncover your right shoulder. It means you are showing respect, and so this why do you wear it like this? Why is this the robe? Why is this the fashion instead of like Catholics have full robes, right? And the Koreans have their way of traditionally dressing and things like that. But why in India is it this fabric? Well, I got to kind of understand this why. It's because in India it gets very cold, but at the same time it gets very hot. Therefore, you want to dress in layers, and so because it's very humidly cold, which is very different from dry cold, it gets very chilly, and you want to cover your ears and the back of your neck, and that's why fashion kind of is like this. You wear a lot of thin fabric that you can kind of take off or unwind in a different way to adapt to the weather. So that's something I wouldn't have really been able to know if I didn't really visit. And this picture I took the next day because we went on a boat ride the next day. So this is just to show you it's not just the guys who are bathing here, it's practically everyone. And this is Nagasaru, I think. The Hindu practitioners who are like body painted and things like that. I'm not really well versed in the Hindu part, but there's a Hindu celebration. I forgot the name, but I think that celebration is where all the Nagasarus kind of like congregate near Varanasi. But this is the only person I saw in Varanasi who had that. And of course, in India, how can you not have chai? Chai, great tea, milk tea, and this cup is made from clay. And the cool thing is, when you're done drinking, you just break it. You just throw it down to the ground. And you might think, well, isn't that irresponsible for the environment? Well, the thing is, the ground is practically all dirt in India, and therefore, when you make this cup, you collect it from the ground. You collect it from the dirt on the ground, and then you bake the clay. And so when you break it, it just goes back, and you just continue repeating the cycle. So it's actually kind of ecologically, conscious, and it kind of is the de facto way of consuming beverages like chai. And yeah, chai is, needless to say, absolutely great. And yeah, this is the boat ride, and you can see the air quality, the visibility. It's not that great, again, for various reasons. A lot of things burning, and this is where the cremations are happening. You can see the smoke coming out. This is where the bodies are being burned, and this is the lumber. And apparently, depending on your caste, you get to use different kinds of lumber and wood. And the videos aren't working. And this is Stupa, uh, one of the Buddhist sites in Sarnath. So the well, I'll talk about the holy sites in a little bit. But yeah, after visiting the temple, have a little bit of a ceremony here, and then had some lassi as well. Lassi is basically Indian yogurt. So good. Rabri, another dairy product that's like a topping. So good. I miss it so much. Okay, going to the map here. The reason why we went to Varanasi is because it's important culturally to understand India, but the more important reason why we go here is to visit Sarnath, which is around here. You can tell I'm not a local. Oh, it's actually a lot closer. Okay, so this is Sarnath. And Sarnath is important because it is one of the 4 holy sites in Buddhism. And why is it a holy site? It's a holy site because this is the first location Buddha taught somebody of the Dharma. Why is that important? Well, you are born. That's the first holy site. And then you have this deep question about the nature of suffering inherent in humanity, and you want to solve for suffering for good. And then you meditate, and then after 6 years of practice, you arrive at the awakening. That's the second holy site, Bodh Gaya. And then you arrive at the awakening. But if only you arrived at the awakening and nobody else did, then you just saved yourself. You're not saving humanity, right? So the important thing about saving humanity is that the Dharma needs to be spread. And for the Dharma to be spread, it needs to be propagated at least once, right? So Sarnath is the location where the first sermon or teaching happened, and it was understood. Prior to visiting Sarnath, Buddha did talk to some people and in an attempt to spread the Dharma. But it didn't always land because Buddha was up in this level, but the rest of the people were kind of in here. They just didn't vibe in the same frequency. But Buddha had some former kind of like co-practitioners who were practicing with him. And so Buddha thought they might be around the level where they would be able to understand what the Dharma is with my guidance. And so Buddha taught it, and then they were able to come. And that is why this is the holy site. And then Buddha dies later, and that's the 4th holy site. So this isn't a god. This pillar is very, very important. And this pillar is called the Ashoka pillar. Ashoka pillar is important because India, surprisingly, is not very, very much in favor of restoring and celebrating Buddhism. in India, Buddhism is a very, 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 very minor minority religion because it's kind of been absorbed into Hinduism. So, Buddha is one of the many important god-like figures in Hinduism. It kind of culturally became a subset of Hinduism. So, you will see a lot of Indian people visiting the Buddhist holy sites, but they're not visiting as Buddhists. They're visiting as Hindus, and they are practically visiting a Hindu temple, right? And the ownership of the temples are like all owned by Hindus, right? And in this kind of a climate, of course, you would not really preserve in Buddhist relics, Buddhist sites. After Buddha's passing, the first king who completely ruled over India as a whole, King Ashoka, became a Buddhist. After he realized, yes, he did unite India, but at what cost? He killed so many people with war. And after a deep remorse of that, and he came to the teachings of the Buddha, and this again after Buddha's passing, he vowed, oh, I'm never going to kill another human being again. I'm never going to harm another life again. And he became a very devout Buddhist. And so the king went on a pilgrimage. This isn't too long after Buddha's death, so there were, like, at that time the sites were fairly well preserved. And so King Ashoka went to all these important Buddhist places and left a landmark. And that landmark is the Ashoka Pillar. After that, a lot of wars in India again. The Muslims came, English came, blah blah blah. Time passed, Buddhism wasn't really well preserved. And because of that, everything was kind of buried. And then during excavation, for whatever reason, maybe it's development, maybe people were just digging for fun, they find that, whoa, there's this really big thing. There's like this god with four faces, like Rio is saying. And that is when they realized that, oh, this is a King Ashoka pillar, so there must have been something important here. And that is how we kind of retroactively figured out geographically where Buddha went. And that's why the Ashoka pillar is so important. Because without the Ashoka pillars, we can't really know where exactly it was, right? India is a really big country with a lot of history, right? So, we vaguely know that Buddha was born around in Nepal, around here. We vaguely know Buddha attained Buddhahood here. Gaia-ish here. We vaguely know, spread the word here, and then we vaguely know Buddha passed around here. So, even when you do that, like, the vaguely is already, like, so many different cities, right? Without the Ashoka pillar, it's impossible to figure out where exactly it is. And that's why the Ashoka pillar is extremely important. So that's why we went to Sarnath. And Sarnath is actually one of the most well-maintained, Buddhist sites. But even in here, as you can see, they're just ruins. There's really not much going on here. And this stupa that you see in the left is the stupa, which is like the ceremonial building, so to speak. And this is where the pillar used to be. But again, it looked so important, so the raiders, they broke it down and then kind of raided and took away the Ashoka pillar. They were able to retrieve some of it. And you can see the difference in clay. So the red is the naturally occurring brick, and the gray stone with a lot of engravings, those are kind of the stones that were brought in over to kind of restore, and they were brought in for special purposes. This is the stupa. It looks really big, but you can already see that there's a difference here, right? So you can already tell that this isn't the original structure. It's gone through renovation and reservation. And a lot of deer. There's a deer sanctuary here. Again, the stupa commemorating the first time the Dharma was spread. And then this is where we had our ceremony of being the Buddha's student. And then yeah, this is a Burmese kind of a reenactment. This is a temple, but the first sermon is kind of celebrated in this Bulganda Kuti, I think is what it's called. And yeah, so that's it for Sarnath. And then we venture into Gaya, which is the second place, second holy site that we saw, and where Buddha attained his awakening. Gaya is the name of the city, but because this is where Buddha got his awakening, it is also called Bodh Gaya. Bodh meaning, great knowledge or wisdom. I'm gonna grab some water because I've been talking like nonstop. Also, you can ask me anything in the chat, and then I'll take a brief pause about explaining India, and then I'll talk about stuff. But I'll be back with some water. I don't know why Google Maps is showing squares instead of proper icons. Something must be wrong. I don't know why. But anyway, Bodh Gaya. We start our journey in the Gaya mountain, which is like here, and again, as you can see, very poor visibility. The Gaya mountain is, I think, around here. I don't know if you can see my cursor, but it's around here. Why Gaya mountain, or maybe it's here, depending based on the elevation. Why there? It's because Buddha was up on that mountain, and he wanted to gain a good visibility into the local area because he was searching for a place to meditate and practice. And he wanted somewhere not too far from the village because he needed to come down occasionally to beg for food. And but he also wanted it to be relatively quiet so that he could meditate in peace. And so he saw some areas like, where can I stay? Where can I, really meditate in peace? And he found the proper location, and that is around here, the Prakbodhi cave, or the mountains of Dungeshwari. So, after visiting this mountain, he came out around this area. This is the mountains of Dungeshwari. And so in the Dungeshwari, we are here, and the important part of this is where he came in. This is where he engaged in voluntary suffering. So Buddha at first started with meditating by his own, but then he became so hungry, and he got a lot of distractions, and he was like, oh, okay, this is harder than I thought, and I want to really go meditate somewhere with a teacher. So he found a teacher, but the teacher was kind of like not that great. Of course, he had something to learn from the teacher, but he quickly reached the level of the teacher and found that, oh, this isn't the answer. So he did that with two people. He found two teachers. And then the limitations of the teachers was this. Number one, the teacher taught Buddha how to properly meditate. And he found that in meditation, they're right. There's no suffering in meditation. But life exists outside of meditation, right? So when you open the eyes, and then when you do go about your life, your mind gets chaotic again. So you do get inner peace, but if it only lasts in meditation, then is it truly inner peace? Buddha had a doubt about that. The second teacher, again, taught something related to suffering, self-inflicted suffering, because why? They saw that, hey, all the suffering comes from desire, so we need to conquer desire, right? So Buddha saw a limitation with that, but at the same time, he did see that, maybe there is a point. Maybe, because I find myself riddled with desires as well. And I do see that over time, as I conquer some of the desires, I do get some inner peace. So maybe if I really, really, really engage in self-inflicted suffering, maybe I can conquer suffering once and for all. And he thought about doing that, and he found that he always reached a certain point of suffering, and then you have to stop, right? Because it starts to threaten your life. And Buddha thought, maybe that is what we need to conquer. And he wanted to really, really give his all to do that. And that's why he stayed in this cave called the Prakbodhi Cave. And he sought out to really be done with suffering once and for all. So that's why the Buddhist statues you see here, the Buddha will be very, very, very skinny. Why? Because this is where he engaged in intentional fasting. This is where he engaged in not moving and sitting on rocks and not sleeping and not washing and bugs crawling all over, but he just gave everything. And then local children throwing stones at him and taunting him and making bets about whether he's alive or not. And so this is where he did that for 6 years. For 6 years he practiced like this. But he saw that this is not the way, and he renounced suffering. And so he descended from these mountains. And I'll talk about the other pictures in a little bit. He descended the mountains and he walked all the way from Dungeshwari to, he walked all the way from here to here, across the river. And he crossed, when he was crossing the river, he bathed himself. But After bathing, because he was so weak, he almost washed away. But he almost grabbed onto a tree branch and then was able to come out of the river. But he was famished, right? And so he was almost dead. So a local maiden named Sujata uh, saw Buddha almost dead and offered to feed him some milk soup. And with that, Buddha recovered some of his strength. And after recovering his strength, he sought out to look for his final place where he was going to attain awakening. Because he saw that suffering was not the answer. But at the same time, because of the suffering, he was able to withstand a lot of the discomforts in between his maximum. So, he found the middle, he was going to find the middle way. He was going to comfortably engage in deep meditation. He was going to engage himself in comfort. Because, yes, I'm not trying to follow my desires, I just want to be comfortably seeking the truth. After recovering, he went to here. The Mahabodhi temple is now the celebratory site of Buddha's awakening. He sat in front of a tree, Bodhi tree, which you can't see here. Maybe you can see it like this. Yes. So the Bodh Gaya Bodhi tree is this tree that you see here. And he sat in front of this tree after getting some cushion, which was you couldn't do as a self-inflicted suffering person because you were supposed to not care about your comfort at all. He got a little bit of cushion from the local grass cutter, and he sat down and he meditated for 7 weeks. And then at the night, as he opened his eyes to look at the night sky and the brightly shining star, he got his awakening. And he realized two things: the middle way and dependent arising. And with that, he attained Buddhahood. And immediately after that, he didn't, walk all the way to Sarnath, which is where we were just were. He savored and really enjoyed the awakening and the stillness of the mind for 7 weeks. So 7 weeks of meditation, awakening, 7 weeks of savoring and enjoying the meditation, the peace. And so this temple, the Mahabodhi temple, is the site where all of that happened. And because of that, this is like the most important Buddhist site. It's very well fenced, and you can't really take your camera here, which is why I don't have a lot of pictures of it. But this is the Mahabodhi temple, and pretty much the most important Buddhist holy site, and to be honest, the most impressive site here to me. Not because of the architecture and the preservation of it, which again it is definitely a factor, but the really cool thing about Bodh Gaya and the Mahabodhi temple is that it's a place where every Buddhist comes. And it's really inspirational what the people do there. Especially the Tibetan Buddhists. So there's a lot of Thai Buddhists there. There's a lot of people from Myanmar, Burmese monks there. There's a lot of people from Bhutan. There's a lot of people from, Korea. There were 430 of us. But the important thing with the Tibetan people is that they're so devout. And how can you know someone is devout? Well, as you walk around the temple, one of the ceremonies that you do at a holy site in Buddhism is you walk around the stupa clockwise. And as you are walking around, you see so many Tibetan monks who are, doing the chants, right? The chants. Like, Om Mani Padme Om Mani Padme Om, and then you walk around one lap, and they're still at the same site. They're Om Mani Padme Om Mani Padme Om, and then you walk around once again, and then you see them at the same place. Om Mani Padme Om Mani Padme Om, and they're doing that prayer for like practically the whole day. And another really great, crazy thing is the Tibetan prostration, which is different from the Korean one, because the Korean one you stop at you stop here. You stop as you're kneeling and you're kind of like head down. But Tibetan, you fully go down, right? You're fully going down like this. So you start standing up, you go full down, and then you do this, and then you wake up, and basically you walk around the entire temple doing this. You don't walk, you bow as you do the sacred walk. And it's not, and the crazy thing is, it's not just the monks. Just ordinary housewife looking ladies do this. Grandmas do this. Young guys do this. Children do this. So to see that level of devotion to Buddhism is actually really, 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 really inspiring. Because you get to really reflect on when have I really devoted myself to anything? And with other religions that have a god, you can devote yourself to God. But with Buddhism, we're trying to save ourselves from suffering, right? Like, especially, well, you know what? This is a common thread in all kinds of Buddhism. Theravada Buddhism is for for attaining arahat status through meditation for yourself. But for Mahayana Buddhism, you are seeking attainment of enlightenment, but at the same time you are seeking salvation for the people who do not have that enlightenment. So this pursuit of your inner liberation from suffering, this is a common thread. It's in all Buddhism, right? So to look at all these people from different walks of life fully devoted to themselves and the liberation of suffering, this is really, really awe-inspiring to watch. And so I did my 108 bows at the Mahabodhi temple that day, and I meditated at the Mahabodhi temple that day. And to a Buddhist, I don't think this is a experience that you can kind of top. This is one of the really peak honorable Buddhist things that you do. And so it was just such an awe-inspiring event for me. But so I think in all the holy sites, I think my personal favorite was Bodh Gaya. And but anyway, the reason why we visit the Gaya, it's not just because of the Bodh Gaya. It's because my Buddhist order has a school here called Sujata Academy. And the Sujata Academy is basically where what all of these photos are. So the story goes like this. My Buddhist order is led by a Korean monk, and his name is the Venerable Pomyun Snim. 30 something years ago, um, our Buddhism teacher and the leader of our order, he was on a pilgrimage of his own. And at the time, he was just kind of soloing it, right? He was doing it alone. And then he didn't. Actually, let me record this. This is a story of the Sujata Academy in India. I am part of a Buddhist order in Korea called the Jongto Society, and in America it's Joined Together Society. It's JTS. JTS is led by a Korean monk named the Venerable Pomyun Sinim. 30 something years ago, he visited India on a solo pilgrimage because he was interested in the life of the Buddha, not as a mystical figure, but as an individual human being. And but it was his first time in India, and he got a lot of word of advice from other people related to traveling in India. In India, there are a lot of people begging because it is a cultural aspect of the being in India. So what he was advised was, don't give the beggars more than 1 rupee. That should be your maximum. And at the time, there was a there was some unit that was smaller than rupee that was more common. So basically, don't give somebody more than 1 rupee. That was kind of the golden rule, right? And so the leader of our order at the time, he was like, okay, I got that. And so a lot of people begging, but then he was able to kind of ignore most of them. And but on one night, he was going out and trying to do some stuff, just look at some holy sites, explore India a little bit more, when a person tugged on his arm. And he was like, no, I don't want to deal with you. I don't want to help you. But they kept on insisting. So the monk was like, okay, so I'll just give you 1 rupee. But she wasn't interested in the rupee. So our monk is like, well, then what? And the lady kept on pointing to something. And so he was like, okay, let's go look at it. And where she was pointing, there was her baby. And after she got the baby, she kept on pointing to something, and it was baby formula. So she wanted baby formula for the kid, for her infant child. And so he was like, oh, they have nothing to eat. Okay, the baby doesn't have anything to eat. So okay, so he asked the store, how much is the baby formula? And they said, if I'm remembering the story correctly, it's 13 rupees, right? That's 13 times more than the maximum allowed, of rupees that you can give out, right? So he brushed the woman off and then came back to the where he was staying, the hostel, the guest house, and he asked the local person, "Hey, how much in Korean won is 13 rupees?" And it turns out it's really, really cheap. It's a few bucks. And now it starts to break his heart, right? Holy crap. I'm supposed to be this monk. And oh my god, I just turned away a woman where I'm supposed to be this compassionate person, and I denied this kid a meal. And so he rushed outside of his hostel to find this lady again, but then this lady was not to be found. And so it started eating away at him, right? And so at that moment, he just kind of lost it. And so he started giving every beggar money. Anyone asked, he just gave away. He just gave away. And he decided that was the way to go, right? Because you never know what's happening in these begging people's lives. So that was his initial kind of answer to this situation. What do we do with this misery of begging? Oh, we have to give. And then another event happened. The thing that happened is he went to another city, which was a little bit more affluent than the cities he was used to visiting, right? And then so he's in India, where there's a lot of foreigners, and then the kids get to see this foreign monk, and the local children are all watching from a distance and then laughing and giggling, right? So our leader, our monk, he thinks, oh, the kids must be wanting some money or some candy. And when he approached the kids ran away. Which again is shocking to him. Why? Why are these kids not begging when the other kids are begging? And then he realized it's because the kids who are used to begging are used to receiving. Basically, begging is the result of a social system that requires participation from both the giver and the beggar. So, because in this region of India, kids weren't begging, there was no system to make the begging happen. Because why? There's nobody to give it to the kids because there's nobody asking for it. So, our leader is once again confused. What's the right answer to begging? Because he thought at one point, the answer was to freely give. Then, he realized that his free giving was actually contributing to the problem by perpetuating the cycle of begging once more. So what is the right way to go about this? And as he was having this dilemma, he went into the region of Dungeshwari. And the Dungeshwari is important because it is the Buddhist site where Buddha voluntarily suffered for 6 years. And as he ventured out into this neighborhood to visit this holy site and to visit the cave where Buddha, meditated and suffering, he saw a bunch of kids begging. And he asked the locals, "Is today Sunday?" And it wasn't. Then he asked, then why are all these kids not at school? Why are they out in the streets begging? And the local adult said, "What school?" Basically, because this is a region with low caste people, there were no schools. India has a caste system, which is constitutionally not supposed to discriminate, but socially it still exists. And because of that, this is a low caste kind of an environment, there was no public school. And because there was no school, the kids had nowhere to go, and they perpetuate the cycle. So, as he explored why there isn't no school, is because of abject, really, really, really big poverty. So, the locals wanted a school for the kids. But, if he just builds a school, then it's gonna further contribute to the problem of just freely getting something. It's gonna perpetuate yet another cycle of begging. So, he wanted some local participation. Why should I build a school for you? And this is where the life of the monk, or the Pomyun Sunim, is a little bit more relevant. He didn't go to college. He barely finished school because he was also very poor growing up. But he had a lot of academic drive, and he was able to become a monk, and he was able to be fairly knowledgeable about things. So, he asked the locals, I didn't go to proper school, but I'm fine. So why should I build a school for your kids? Because you're not doing anything. I mean, I have the resources. I could build one for you, but like I'm fine without that education. So why should I build a school for you? And they replied, because we want to, but we don't have money. We don't have the resources. So he inspired the drive to do something themselves and provided the resources to the people who would do it. He didn't hire anybody. He said, okay, so I'll bring the resources, but all of you have to donate land. Your land. Because this is your children. This is your life. This is your neighborhood. You have to donate the lot, and you have to do the building. I'm happy to provide the resources. And that's how the school got started. And this is our monks' way of being in the middle way. Of providing something, but at the same time, having them engaged in the work. And this philosophy is still the driving mechanism for humanitarian support in joined together society. The result of this is Sujata Academy. And why Sujata Academy? It's because this area is where the lady who saved Buddha's life after his malnourishment body almost died. Sujata saved Buddha and gave Buddha the last meal prior to his Buddhahood. To honor that, and because it's the same region, these children may be the descendants of Sujata, and to repay the great debt that we Buddhists owe to Sujata, named it Sujata Academy. And so 30 years later, we have a school that has raised generations of new students who are all literate now, who all have higher education. And this is the Sujata Academy welcoming ceremony. All the neighbor people here, they're not begging. They're here to celebrate, but not beg. These are the children who greeted us. And as we enter here, we get, flower ceremony. And all the students here are welcoming us because we are the annual visitors to this academy. And we all come here to pay our respect to the students. And we are at this school because we get to learn that when we donate to our Buddhist order, this is where the money goes, to raising the next generation of children who actually have hope, who grow up learning something other than begging, right? We don't consider begging this cultural thing that is unilaterally bad and we need to solve for it. You can go beg if that's what you want to do, but we give students the chance to not fall into the trap and the vicious cycle of begging that they involuntarily participate in. We give them an education and we give them a chance to choose. their destiny, regardless of their caste, regardless of their status, regardless of their upbringing, regardless of their poverty, because this school is run for free. And it runs for free because Buddhists around Korea and the world, basically the members of our Buddhist order, donate. And we donate for humanitarian causes, many of them, but primarily it goes to this school. And that is the story of Sujata Academy. But a quick aside is that this is the late Seol Seongbong Stupa. Why is this important? When we were building this school, there were some architects who were volunteers helping build this school from an architectural perspective. But at the time, this area was not that safe. And so armed muggers came to the school when it was being built, and they killed the architect, the Korean architect. And his name is Seol Seongbong. And this is somewhat important to me, more important to me than other people, because my last name is also Seol. And Seol is a fairly rare last name in Korea, which means we are all practically relatives. So this is the resting ground for a distant uncle that I have. And he died in service to this community. And to visit this site as a relative, a distant nephew to this individual, it was very meaningful to me. And the other thing to note is there's this hospital called the Jivaka Hospital. This hospital is important because they had a school, but the kids showed up, but they kept on fainting. And they quickly realized that it's because the kids are malnourished. And so we realized that not only is education very frail and weak, the other really weak part is health, public health. Cholera and tuberculosis and infant care were all very lacking in this area. So there was a hospital that was founded that provides a lot of aid for first aid, especially tuberculosis and natal care. And with this hospital, the mortality rate really declined. And this hospital also serves as a public health care center for the region of Dungaswari. And why it's named Jivaka Hospital? Jivaka was the primary care physician for Buddha at the time. And that's why we have this hospital that is right next to, actually inside of the school complex. And this hospital is also run purely by volunteers. And that is another beautiful thing about Sujata Academy. And that is the story of how our Buddhist order has a presence in India. Hey SP, how are you doing? I'm just recapping my Indian trip. And so I'm gonna take a quick aside to say that I think in general, India is really, really underappreciated. There are so many, of course, sanitation, of course, air quality, of course, like sort of the mannerisms of the people. Of course, India is not without its fair share of things that might cause your frown, but I think those things online and in the public perception is largely overshadowing the beauty of India, right? But when you actually go to India, you will find that the beautiful things in India are actually mind-blowingly beautiful. Like first of all, the food. Food in India is amazing. Um all the herbs and all the kind of like aromatics along with the different flavors and all the mixtures of things, and the dairy products are also really great. Vegetables are very fresh, and so are the fruits if you know wash them a lot. And also, some of the water related things, it's because of the germs and things like that and the water quality. But the water in India is really hard water. That's why it causes a lot of upset stomach. But anyway, food is great. And the dances, the local dances of India, it's mesmerizing, right? And the music of India, again, mesmerizing. And the fashion and the traditional dresses of India, again, not only functional but mesmerizingly beautiful. So I think when you really when you get to see India without the kind of the you know your distorted perspective and skewed perspective about like how it's a third world country or whatever, then you get to truly see the beauty of India. And I think I'm not a really guy who thinks that some things are like you're missing out on things, but I think the beauty of India is one of the things that you might be really missing out on if you're just insisting on the fact that it's a dirty country with poor standard of living. And I I just the general Indian kind of vibe I think is beautiful, but I think secondly, what I personally thought was really beautiful about India is this kind of landscape, right? It's so peaceful. And because of the air quality, you get to kind of look at the sun directly. And man, it's so peaceful to look at all the palm trees and in the farm, like flat farmlands, and the sun just coming up or down. It's so beautiful. And at night, because there's not a lot of light pollution, the stars are so shining brightly. And because I like this landscape so much, I have so many pictures of where it looks so similar. And one of my all-time favorite things related to India, and so see this kind of a peaceful, idyllic landscape. Which brings me to sort of the next topic, is you see how it's not that mountainous, right? These are all stupas. They're built to commemorate Buddha's life. But as you can see, it's also flat here. So in India, mountains are kind of rare. Why? Because the Indian continent is largely a flat land. All of this area is very flat. But the thing is, on the west, it's blocked by this mountain ridge. On the north, it's blocked by the Himalayas. And on the right, again, there's a mountain ridge. So India is kind of locked by mountains. Buddha happened to be born near the Himalayas, right? He was born in Lumbini. So we historians suspect that Buddha typically sought out mountainous places to stay, to meditate, to do all these things because he was used to seeing mountains, and he had kind of an unconscious drive to go back to the places where he was used to. Another thing that I want to mention is that the chants in Buddhism, right? when you listen to the Korean chants and Korean Buddhist ceremonies, they really resembled traditional Korean folk music, and it's called sori. So if you, I can't play it because it's on YouTube and I'm gonna get copyright striked. But if you watch Korean traditional music, especially vocal ones, you will see that it has a certain kind of a intonation. It has a certain kind of accentuation, right? So when you look at the Buddhist chants in Korean, it's very like Korean music, right? So it would go like 개양 정향 해양 해탈양, and this sounds like Korean music. But in India, I got to listen to some Buddhist chants in Hindi, or in Pali. And you know what? That sounds a lot like the Indian music that we are used to listening. And as I mentioned earlier, like the Tibetan, Buddhist prayers, they're all very resembling of the music of that region, right? So that was really cool to see how all these different cultures have different kinds of music, and it all gets infused with the Buddhist chants and the mantras, with the culture. So that is pretty much the first leg of the Indian trip. So we went from Varanasi and then we went to Gaya. And then we go to Rajgir, which is this. Rajgir is important because it is the site of many, 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 many Buddhist sutras. There was a king here who became a follower of the Buddha, and that's why there's a lot of sutras related to this king, and that's why Rajgir is important. And some photos of Rajgir is here. These are the stupas of Rajgir. And no, not this. There's a mountain we hiked. Yeah, this is Rajgir. And there's a very prominent temple that was the background for all these Buddhist sutras. And yeah, this is the mountain that we hiked, and we hiked here to get to this cave, which the cave is the location where all the Buddhist sutras were written. And this is a super high mountain. Yeah, so that's that. And this is where the cave is, and we tried to recreate the scene where all like 500 people were here to gathered around to write the first rendition of the Buddhist sutras. And this is the temple that we stayed at, and there was a very chunky golden retriever. And here's a quick selfie. And after Rajgir, we went to Kusinagar, which is a little bit north from here. And Kusinagar is where the Buddha was laid to rest. And you can see this is the inside of the temple where the Buddha was laid to rest. You can see the reenactment. The statue basically resembles how the Buddha passed. And I have a video about that. And then we did kind of a Korean ceremony, a Korean ceremony for the dead, because it's kind of timely, right? And again, a Burmese temple where we stayed. And then we crossed the border up to Nepal to go to Lumbini, which is where the Buddha was born. Kapilavastu was where he was raised. Lumbini was where he was born. And the cool thing to note about this place is that India doesn't have accessibility in mind. There are no ramps. But when you got to Nepal, you can see that there are ramps. And there are some other differences between Nepal and India, although they're mostly very similar. Namely, in India, you can go pee and poo anywhere. Uh, you can just kind of like, and it's kind of a normal thing. But in Nepal, you don't really do that. So in Nepal, we were advised to, hey, please don't pee anywhere. And another thing is there's an accessibility in mind. There you can see ramps. But I heard from an Indian friend of mine that in India, it's that way because wheelchairs tend to be very expensive, and the disabled people tend to not be that affluent, and therefore, when you're disabled and or crippled, you usually find other ways of getting around, and that is why uh, India doesn't really have accessibility in mind. Um, and looking at the crippled people is kind of a unique experience because you see a lot of this. So these people, they're practically all upper body. They are able to get by with just the upper body. Some people crawl with the carts, but most of them usually just get by with their upper body. And because of this, legs are kind of a burden, right? So yeah, like these are the people who can afford wheelchairs, but what people usually end up doing is they just tie their legs with themselves. They make a knot with their legs so that they can just freely get by without their legs just kind of dangling. Like this. So, some people tie their legs up behind their neck like the yoga pose. Some people tie it on their hips. Some people just knot it, And at first, this can be kind of a shocking thing to see. Some people crawl like this, but yeah, there's many ways of getting around. So when I actually saw this, I was like, okay, you know what? That kind of makes sense. Because the thing is, as they're walking around, they're not really in pain. They know how to get by. I'm not saying these people don't need help, or they can't benefit from help, but it's just that when you go to India, you will see that regardless of the circumstance, there's always kind of a way to make things kind of work. And that's largely the lesson that I got from being in India. But anyway, this is Lumbini. Again, you see the familiar bricks that are the marks of the Buddhist holy sites. And as I mentioned earlier, the Ashoka temple pillar, right? So, not like that. So this is where the pillar used to be, and the head of the pillar is it's I think they vandalized it or something, so it's stored right next to it. These are some I think these are either Tibetan monks, or I think these are Tibetan monks in the same site, because these are prominent holy sites. It's not just us doing the pilgrimage. Monkeys, a lot of monkeys in India and Nepal as well. Ashoka pillar are 4 lions, and this is kind of the national symbol of India. So you will see that rupees. You will see that in the rupees, there is a symbol for the Ashoka pillar as well. You see it here, right? So the Ashoka pillar is a very important kind of a cultural mark. Okay, but after visiting Lumbini, we went to this place called Tansen. And why we went to Tansen is because it's not related to Buddhism, but when you go to Tansen, you can see the Himalaya mountains like this, Annapurna. And I don't know if it's the Everest, but anyway, you can see the mountains there. That's why we visited. This is early in the morning. Beautiful, right? And the sun is starting to rise, and we're gonna hike it so that we can see the mountains. And it's so high, we're above the clouds, as you can see. And the buildings in Tansen are absolutely beautiful. Oh, and such a good picture, right? You can see the peaks of the Himalayas. Absolutely beautiful. Breathtaking. And the sun's rising. It's such a memorable experience for me. I think after Bodh Gaya, it's like the most memorable experience because I'm not usually a hiking guy, right? I don't really like to hike, but the fact that I was able to hike up this mountain and to see the Himalayas with my own two eyes, I never thought that would be possible in my own life. But man, this is such a beautiful experience. And you can see the sun rising here, and you can also see the moon from here. And absolutely beautiful. A lot of Hindu sites are also Jain. I don't know how to properly say it, but Jainism. They also have lots of holy sites here. We had breakfast here, and then again, it's a picture of the Himalayas. Absolutely beautiful. Anyway, after we come down from Tansen, which is a crazy, so this descent from here to here is, especially on a bus, is crazy. I don't know how the bus drivers do it. There's like one lane, but it's crazy. But anyway, after that, we come down to Kapilavastu, which is where Buddha was born. Buddha was raised. So in Kapilavastu, Kapilavastu is Nepal's property at the moment, but right beneath the border, right? This is the Nepal-India border. Right below here, there's this place called Piprahawa. And in Piprahawa, there is also a site that kind of makes it seem like this is